Hello and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Show. So glad to have you with us today. My name is Jeremy. This is my wife, Susanna, and we are very thankful that you would take the time to watch this show and hope that on the other side of it, you would interact with us. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for doing that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Hit the notification bell. That lets you know when other content like this and a lot of other content comes online. And then leave us a message. Go ahead and leave a comment, and we would love to interact with you that way. And really grateful for the opportunity to have these conversations. We, on this show, talk about life, and there are so many different aspects of life that we have the opportunity to talk about. But we approach these with a very simple understanding in mind. We live in an imperfect world as imperfect people. It seems like so much of the world and so much in the kind of self-help genre of the world is about aspiring to be perfect or looking at people who we think are perfect. Social media presents this picture of perfect people to us, but we understand in ourselves we're not perfect. We are imperfect in an imperfect world, and yet we do our best to move forward. We want to help with conversations like this, and I trust that today will be one of those conversations because what we're going to deal with today is something that you have experienced. Now, maybe you've experienced it, but not quite articulated that. You haven't said it out loud. Maybe it's something you wake up every morning thinking about. Maybe you're somewhere in between. But the issue, the topic we're going to deal with today is one that you have definitely dealt with. And that is the topic of rejection. It's a big one. I like to look to the Bible for examples when we discuss things like this. And it's good to know we're in good company if we've been rejected. Because Jesus, who is God, He's perfect, not imperfect. He is perfect. He came to us, the Bible says in John chapter 1, that we received Him not. We rejected Him. And that really is the story of His time on this earth. And yet He came, He did something very important. He did something eternally significant. He did exactly what He came to do in spite of rejection. When we talk about rejection, we don't want to simply acknowledge that it's a problem. We want to learn how to move forward in spite of it, how to deal with that. So, with all of that in mind, rejection.
I think rejection is, like you said, is something that everybody deals with, and starting at a young age as well. And there's so many different types of rejection, but I really feel like it starts when you're young, and every kind of phase of life, or every person, no matter how you're young or old, deals with it probably on a daily basis or on a pretty regular basis. And just watching even the way our kids have had to deal with some of that, younger daughter with friends. And then as they get a little bit older, with maybe not getting a job that they wanted, not maybe getting a class in school that they wanted, that can feel like being rejected a little bit, not getting accepted to a school, or, I think, and then with relationships, and then, as you get older, maybe some opportunities that you have. And so everyone, probably that's watching this, everyone has in their life at some point experienced some kind of rejection, whether it's relationship or job or school or opportunities. And so it is something that everybody deals with.
Yeah. Before we talk about how to deal with it, try to define a little bit. When we talk about rejection, this is different than someone just not liking you or you're not connecting on some level. What does rejection mean? What does that mean to be rejected?
I don't know what the definition of rejection is.
What's your definition of it? Yeah.
But I really honestly feel like it's something that maybe we have put our hope in, that person or that opportunity or this situation working out for us, and then when it doesn't work out the way that we had thought in our minds that it would be, then we feel like that person doesn't want us, that we're not maybe worthy enough to be in their life, that we're not good enough to have that job, that we are not enough we didn't maybe work hard enough for that, to get into that class, or we didn't work hard enough to get that job. And so you feel like that you're not maybe what you're supposed to be because this opportunity or this relationship didn't work out. And so I feel like it's putting our hope in something, and then it doesn't work out the way we were expecting, and then we have that feeling of being not wanted, being not good enough, being not worthy to be able to do this. And so that's kind of, when I think of rejection, that's what I feel that it is, but I do feel like it's very tied to the emotions. And it's an emotion that we feel that we allow then to dictate a lot of other things.
Right.
We think this is the way people now view me. This is the way, if I apply for this other job, this is what's going to happen to me. Or this opportunity that comes up again, I'm not going to go for that because it's going to happen again.
Right.
And so it really dictates the way that we think about ourselves. It dictates the way that we think other people think about us, and dictates maybe the things that we think we can do in life. And so it is an emotion, but we allow it to kind of creep in and take over in all these other areas.
And it's emotional because I think in order to be rejected, you have to, we use this phrase, in our society, put yourself out there.
Right.
I don't like that phrase, but I think it encapsulates what we're talking about.
Yes.
You go to the person, whether it's an employer, it could be a sports team, it could be in a relationship, someone that you like or that you're attracted to. You go to them, but there comes a point where you have to stop, and then they, again, depending on the setting, have to decide whether or not they want what you're selling. Whether it's the relationship or the job position or the spot of the team or inclusion in the friend circle if you're younger. And so it is emotional because this is different than someone coming to you and saying, oh, never mind. If someone walks up to me and says, you know what, never mind, I don't care. I was not emotionally invested in that. I wasn't putting myself out there. I wasn't being vulnerable. But rejection happens when we're being vulnerable. One of the roles that I have in our foundation is to hire, at various levels. And I always feel bad when someone applies and then we do an interview, because that is a very emotional connection. They're trying to sell themselves. They've done some research on the organization. I'm asking personal questions of them. And then we go, you know what, never mind. Now, I don't mean by that you're not good enough, but that's a rejection because they have been vulnerable with me in a way they may not have otherwise. And so it can feel personal. And I think that's the case in all these areas of rejection. And so what happens often, the way people deal with that is they say, well, I'm not going to get close to anyone anymore. I may even be married, but because my spouse has rejected me in this area or that area, I kind of put myself out there and they, whatever. I'm just going to be closed off to everyone now. And I can function, I can do what I need to do, but I'll never be vulnerable. And the problem with that is that you also never grow, you never develop. There's no safety in those relationships. So it creates a very dangerous kind of isolation in our lives.
Yeah, it's definitely when we allow it to get to that point.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what we want to talk about today is that, what it is, how it kind of makes us feel, but then how to not let it get to the point where it's now dictates your future and dictates how you deal with, other people and other situations and as they come your way. Because it can be very dangerous if you allow it to get to that point where you're isolating yourself and you're not giving other people a chance, other situations a chance. I like that you pointed out the sports team, because really, the way things are right now, there's not really a lot of sports things happening. But really for young people, I kind of feel like that might be one of the first times that they feel that rejection. You always think about the playground situation where they're picking teams for dodgeball or for...
I was always picked first.
Of course you were. I never wanted to play, so I never experienced that. But where they pick teams and, the last person that's picked is, I can imagine is that rejection that is felt there. And so that is kind of, I feel like one of the earliest times where maybe kids feel rejected. And so maybe that would ever even keep them from trying out for a team. So I like that you pointed that out, but I think it is true. It can take over so much of our life if we let it get there.
Yeah. People who are often very passive in life and in relationships may not have always been that way. A lot of that stems from, I make an attempt, I try to do something and I'm rejected, and so I'm just not going to do that anymore. And I wonder how many young people aren't playing sports because they had their feelings hurt, right? On the playground. How many people aren't in relationships? And relationships can be wonderful, although we're all imperfect, and so there will be times of hurt and rejection and pain. But to avoid all of that, there's no even getting involved in those relationships. It really closes us off to the great things that potentially are in front of us in life. So how do we deal with that? That's the question in front of us. And this is one of those topics that We could probably do several 30-minute, hour-long episodes. We could talk about rejection for children. How do we help our kids deal with rejection? We could talk about rejection in intimate relationships, and how do we deal with that? We could talk about rejection in all these areas. So it needs to be contextualized for you, whatever your situation is. But generally speaking, very broadly, how do we deal with, in a healthy way, rejection? What are some of the things that we need to keep in mind?
When I think about that, and not that I always practice these things in my own life.
That's because
but,
you're imperfect.
Right. But really just learning how to deal with it a little bit better. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot here recently, and just really in the context of how to help our kids with it, and specifically the girls. But even, I mean, we've experienced some things with our boys in the last year or so that really, I feel like has shown me that it's not just, for me, I feel, you think about girls, sometimes I think girls are maybe prone to feeling the emotion of rejection because we're wired more emotionally anyways. But even for guys and even for boys to feel that just because this one situation happened to you does not mean that you have to allow it to now dictate how you respond in the other situations. And so I've been thinking about it a lot in the context of our kids, but like you said, just in generally speaking, I think the biggest thing about moving forward from that, or moving past a rejection, or when it, when a situation like that happens in your life again, is just because you have been rejected one time doesn't dictate how things are going to go for you in the future. Just because maybe you were rejected in this one relationship, or this job that you applied for, doesn't mean that the next relationship, the next job is going to go that way as well. And just because of one rejection doesn't mean that it kind of dictates, like, this is what your future is going to look like.
Right. Yeah, view every situation as an isolated situation. So that's really important, particularly in early relationships.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things where you're really careful. You put yourself, in a position where you can be rejected, and then if you are, you say, this just hurts too much. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I think relationships are, like you said, we probably could spend a really long time talking about rejection in relationships, in different contexts of relationships. But I do feel like that is huge, especially for young people, to really not take that as, okay, if there is another relationship, I'm just not going to pursue it, or I'm not going to go, I'm just not even going to try. So I think relationships are huge, especially for young people.
So don't view one rejection as this is how it's going to be for the rest of your life. That's really important. I think another important one is, particularly as you're raising kids as a parent, but at any stage of life, is understanding where your actual value and worth comes from.
Yeah.
People can't hurt me if I don't give them the power to, and it's much easier said than done. I understand that, but I cannot be controlled by other people if I don't give them control. And if I realize that their rejection of me, again, in whatever setting, and sometimes it's sincere, it's not someone trying to be hurtful, but whatever the setting, their rejection of me does not impact who I am or where my value is found.
Yeah, and that's really important. That's huge, and really just knowing that who we are. And when we're talking about God and being people who God created for a purpose and for a reason, it's really important to understand that and to find your value in not what other people think about you, or whether you get that job. And your life is bigger than that, and you're more than that, and you're more than just the circumstances in your life, or this rejection over here, because you have been loved and accepted by God, who loves you and who gave His Son for you.
And that's an unconditional love.
Yeah, and that's
from a God who knows everything about you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And He didn't have to do that for us, but He has every reason to reject us because of what we have done to Him, and in our actions and sin and all of that. I think we could talk about that for a long time. But He chose to love us. He chose to give His Son for us. And so for us to feel so loved and valued by, a God whose love never changes and it's never going to go away, for us to be reminded of that and remind ourselves of that every day, that's what we need to find our value in, and that's what we need to find our worth in, so that when these situations do come into our life, we can maybe realize that, okay, I'm loved by a God who did all these things for me, whose love never changes for me, and just because I maybe was rejected by this person, or didn't get this opportunity that I wanted, or this job that I wanted, or whatever that is, doesn't mean that he doesn't love me anymore, or that he loves me less, or that I can't find my value in God. And I think when we live our lives like that, these things can come our way, and it doesn't have to shake us, or it doesn't have to move us from really knowing that our value and our worth comes from God and who he says we are and the way that he's loved us.
Yeah. And I think that's important as an anchor, because then when we have an encounter with someone or something that we were saying is a rejection experience, we can look past that as, okay, this is not everyone, everywhere for the rest of my life. I know who I am, and I'll just go find another group, another opportunity, another whatever. So important. So it's understanding what happened now does not define what will happen for the rest of my life. It's understanding I know who I am, I have value, I have worth. God, who knows everything about me, still loves me. Really, really important. I think something else that helps me with this is, we say it like this to our kids: don't take it so personal. Don't take everything so personally. We personalize everything.
Yeah.
And in a family relationship, there's dynamics in the family between siblings or parents and kids. Things are said that are not intended to be personal. Like, I'm not attacking you. This is not about you. It's just, I need to say this for one reason or another, or I just want to have a conversation about something that could be better. But I think our interactions with people, again, organizations, teams, whatever it is, where rejection happens, we make that very personal. They didn't hire me for that job because they don't like me. They don't want to have a relationship with me because there's something wrong with me. They're being mean to me, and adults can be mean too. They're being mean to me, they're making fun of me because I have something wrong with me. We take everything so personally. We have to step back and realize everyone in the world is struggling with insecurities and imperfections and trying to figure stuff out. And that employer who's looking for someone to hire, it may be something you would never know, but is very important to them, that has nothing to do with you. That is the reason they're not hiring you for that job. Kids on the playground, they may be making fun of you because they don't want to be made fun of, and it's easier to point it at you than to receive it themselves. That person who doesn't want to have a relationship with you, maybe they've been hurt in a relationship themselves. Maybe they're trying to figure something else out. We just don't know. And so we have to be very, very careful when we experience rejection, not to take it personally. I know who I am. I'm loved. I'm valuable. I have worth. This situation does not define the rest of my life. And maybe there's something in this interaction that I don't understand. Maybe they're going through something. Maybe there's something happening that I don't understand, and I just need to be okay with that. Don't take it so personally.
And there really can be so much peace found in that when, first of all, we know where we find our worth and we find our value. And then just knowing that God has a plan for our lives that's tied to that, that's tied to our value and our worth, that's found in him. And if something doesn't work out, whether that's these things that we're talking about, relationships, jobs, opportunities, things like that. If something doesn't work out in your life, maybe that just means that, God has something else for you. And it's not so much about you, it's more about the bigger picture. And, I feel like it's always so healthy to step back and consider the bigger picture and consider that, all these things are happening, and maybe I do feel rejected in this particular moment, but that does not mean that it is a personal attack against me. It might be, yes, because the other person is dealing with something. It might be that maybe I'm not the right fit for that job. Maybe there's something going on there that I don't know, and it's just best for me to not. Maybe this is the best thing for me. Maybe down the road this was not going to be a good thing for me. And that God is able to see that bigger picture, and that he does have a plan for your life, and that maybe he's causing these things to happen because he has something else for you down the road that's even better than what you thought. And so I do feel like it's so true for us not to take it so personally, but to understand that there is more going on maybe than we would ever even know. Right.
I think grace is something that is missing so often. We want people to extend grace to us. People need to just understand I'm struggling, or I'm going through something, or I'm not perfect. People need to understand that. But if someone does something we don't understand, well, they must hate me. I mean, that's the only thing could be going on there. When maybe they're dealing with their own thing, we need to extend grace. I think another important aspect of this, and it's one that no one likes to hear when they've been hurt or rejected, is that there's probably a lesson in there somewhere for you. Again, I keep going back to the job thing because it's so clear.
Yeah.
But maybe you weren't accepted for that job. You were rejected because something on your resume wasn't right, because there was a question you didn't know the answer to, because you didn't present yourself well, because you left the house and got stuck in traffic and got there late. Maybe it has nothing to do with you, but take some time to step back and reflect on that situation and that interaction. If there's a communication opportunity there, even ask, is there something I could have done different or said different? I still need to get a job. I'm still out there doing things. How can I grow in this moment? How can I learn in this moment? How can I be better having gone through this? I can either just have been rejected and feel bad about it or learn something. In relationships, it's exactly the same. You probably won't ask, what could I have done better? But you can learn from it. Maybe you can ask someone else. This is what I said. This is what I did. This is what happened. Do you think I could have handled that a little bit better? It's amazing to me when I have conversations with people that say, they say something like this. They rejected me. They don't like me. And I just go, no, you're a jerk. That's why they don't like you. But we're so blind to that because that's us. I'm just being real. I'm just being honest. Don't be so real. Get to know someone first. What can you learn from this situation? With kids, we've tried to be very careful with our kids in this and the friend groups and all that stuff. Not to make them more marketable to that friend group. But what can I learn from this? Sometimes what you can learn is there are some not very nice people in the world. And it's okay to walk away from them. Why don't you go find someone else who was also rejected, someone else who's hurting, someone else who needs a friend? There are always lessons to be learned. And if we'll just separate ourselves from the pain that we're feeling right now, we can probably learn something from what's going on.
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered all of that under
that happens sometimes.
that topic. But yeah, I think asking yourself the questions after you've been rejected and really looking at that as a learning experience. And what will help that too, I feel like, is taking the bigger picture into consideration and asking yourself questions, that have to do with that. What am I not seeing? And definitely, what can I learn from this situation?
There are so many different ways to deal with rejection. These are just a couple. What are some of the other, maybe big ones that jump out at you that I wouldn't think of?
I kind of feel like that when we talk about the bigger picture, and God has a plan for us, and taking all these things into consideration, like not taking it personally and knowing that it doesn't dictate what happens in our future, and stepping back and realizing that God does have a plan. Maybe taking some things and learning from it is that maybe in that rejection, God is protecting you maybe from something that you don't know. And maybe I think we already said a lot of this, but just taking all of that into consideration and understanding that there is some protection maybe in what you've experienced. And it's the emotion of feeling rejected. But I think, again, there can be so much peace and comfort to know that we are loved and valued by God, and that He does have a plan for us. And maybe He's just protecting us from that relationship that wasn't the best thing for us. Maybe He's protecting us and He has something else for us that maybe is, or not, but obviously if you're in, asking God to show you, and if you're living in His will and praying and asking Him to direct you and to guide you, then He is going to maybe allow some things not to work out the way that we were hoping that they would. And really just remembering that where our worth and value is found, and that He is maybe protecting us because of the greater plan that He has for our lives.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, those are all great. I think, on the other side of all of this, you need to do what you believe God has called you to do and created you to do. And if people are accepting that, that's wonderful. If they're not, that hurts a little bit. But you continue to do what you believe God has called you to do, what God has created you to do. And trust God for the results on the other side of that. Learn and grow and develop. Be exactly what He wants you to be consistently, and eventually He'll put you exactly where He wants you to do exactly what He wants you to do. And knowing that, again, that doesn't lessen the pain perhaps, but it helps us, once the pain is over, to get back up and continue moving forward. And we can always do that unless we allow the circumstances of life, as temporary as they might be, to become the thing that keeps us from going.
Yeah, and just knowing that other people are dealing with that, and that's why we're
Yeah.
we're talking about this, just
Yeah.
so that there can be just some comfort to know that you're not the only one that has experienced rejection in your life, and that there are people that have dealt with it. Jesus gave us a great example of how to deal with it, and just knowing that it's not something that you experience and that you're alone in that,
Right.
which is why we're talking about
Yeah.
it. So.
Yeah, this is a big topic, and so much more, of course, could be said. But rejection is something we all experience. You're not alone in that. It's universal from the time we're young until probably we die, I guess. It's something we'll experience. But how you handle it, how you deal with it, really will dictate in a big way whether or not you continue to live the life that God has called you to live. And I hope this is an encouragement to you. Let us know if we missed something. Let us know if you have a question about something. We'd love to continue the conversation, and certainly we will. Thank you for watching. We'll talk to you next time.